She's a conservative and I'm liberal, and yet we've been friends for almost 40 years. Everyone says you shouldn't discuss politics, religion, or money. And we say that's exactly what friends should talk about. Join us as we tackle the conversations you're having in your head, but are too scared to say out loud. Welcome to We've Got to Talk.
Hello. We are so excited to have Monica Guzman with us. We have talked about her in a previous episode because she is the professional of what we are trying to do here. So we're just so delighted to have you. This is our first interview, too. Yes. We're like big girls doing a big girl thing.
Yes.
Really?
I know. Yes. Big girl thing. And it seems like you are the perfect first guest for this podcast. Yep. So let me introduce you.
I'm honored.
Let me introduce you.
Yes.
This is your book. It's called I Never Thought of It That Way. How to have fearlessly curious conversations in dangerously divided times. You are also an advisor at Braver Angels. You're the host of the podcast A Braver Way and the founder and CEO of Reclaim Curiosity. Welcome, Monica, to We've Got to Talk.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
So great.
It's awesome.
Oh my gosh. We're just going to jump right in and then see where this conversation takes us. So our first question is, what do you think is happening to our country right now? And how do we move forward together?
I think we are fraying. I think we are still fraying. I think we've been divided always from the beginning. We've been divided for a purpose and with intention. The founders of this country said, we want people to be able to discuss and disagree and for their conflicts to animate our democratic republic. And so from the beginning, we had states' rights versus the federal government. Still today, we have that same tension. So this is a country that has worked very hard for a quarter millennium to uphold a system that allows us to contain healthy tensions and seems to understand that there's a lot of really important issues that you can't resolve for all time. You can only find the best balance for now. I think right now, on the eve of the 250th anniversary, there's a lot of anxiety about whether this experiment can still withstand the slings and arrows of everything. The media environment, social media, technology, misinformation, disinformation, misperceptions, exaggerations, anger, emotional reactivity, the impacts of loneliness and disconnection on a human level across our society, the depth and breadth of disagreements that exist, the high stakes that people feel, on and on and on and on and on. Everyone's got their own monster that they're afraid is going to bring it all down. So that's what I see. I feel like as an immigrant, I have maybe sometimes access to a little more optimism, I think, than some native-born Americans because I know it could be a lot worse. And I see in our country so much worth preserving and such an impetus for working really hard to preserve it and yell maybe less loud about everything that's wrong and try to lean in and work on those guardrails and work on the things that keep us robust. And the foundational one is talking to each other across disagreement. That's the foundation. And people are looking for the exits from that project, but that's the foundation.
Do you think then that social media has totally inhibited this need for curiosity?
I think it has made it easier to be incurious while feeling righteous. I think that's what's happened. It's a playground for reactivity and for messaging and performance of perspectives. That's what it's become. The people who have, at least when it comes to political issues, been most rewarded and elevated for their behavior on social media tend to be the ones who are the best at mobilizing outrage and fear, which are two channels to inaccuracies around what people actually think in service of some other ends. My friend Amanda Ripley, who wrote a book called High Conflict, has a label for people who seem to profit off our division. They are the conflict entrepreneurs. Conflict entrepreneurs do real well on social media.
Yes, they do.
It doesn't mean that there are bad people on social media. It doesn't mean that every conversation on social media is bad. It does mean that it takes more resilience and more skill to have contentious conversations on social media, and that it is almost always better not to.
Yeah.
To be the person who can pick up the phone, who can meet that person for coffee, who can have those contentious, debates with more tools in their toolbox than what social media affords.
So then when we talk about family, we're getting ready to go into the holiday season. You talk about so much about your story and your family being divided. What's the first step that we can take in a family setting when you've got polar opposites sitting around the same table? What's your advice? What are we going to do?
Yeah. First thing is know what you're after. I think a lot of projects for bridge building fall down at that very first step, where people think that they're after connection, but they're actually after conversion or some form of coercion, and they don't know it. Maybe it hasn't been lit up for them, or maybe they just think that it's the right thing to do to try to change their relatives. So that's deep and difficult and personal. That's the first step, is know what you're after. If you are not after conversations with someone in order to understand them, question if you need to have them. Because if you are after persuasion, that's not bad. If you want to change someone's mind, that's not bad. But that road passes through understanding. You cannot change a mind you don't understand, because that mind refuses to be changed, because that mind is not feeling accepted. That mind is feeling judged and condescended to. And we can tell. We're not dumb. We're really, really smart species for conversational dynamics. We know when somebody's BSing us. We know when someone's cajoling us. All these things that we do. So if you want to persuade, great. You got to understand first. Do you understand? What are you missing? Now's a great time to ask. If what you want to do is repair a rupture, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. That's tough. And among the things that are hard about that is that it's not always up to you, and you can't control what the other person is going to do. All you can control is how you behave, but you might be curious and they might not be curious back. You might be giving them a lot of time and grace, and they might not be giving you time and grace back. What I say to that, though, is that in the modeling and showing and demonstrating of curiosity and grace, those things tend to be contagious. Curiosity in particular, I've seen so much research that's making me very excited about this, that it only takes one. You can't guarantee that the other person is going to start using more flexible language. I don't know, what do you think? When I think of this is what comes up. These kinds of things, they do spread. In the context of a conversation, more people will begin to speak flexibly if one person does. So there's at least a chance. There's at least a chance. The other issue with repair, of course, is we tend to think when something has broken or ruptured or is tough, or there's baggage with another family member, that it's all their fault.
Yes.
That, but there's two in a dynamic. And so it takes humility to recognize that it's not them, it's you plus them in some kind of way. What way? You don't have to judge them or yourself necessarily, but you can take a close look at that dynamic. And sometimes if you want to reopen conversations that you haven't been able to have, or open them at all, you have to come a little bit with your head, you have to come and say, hey, I'd love to talk to you about this. I just want to tell you, I know that I tend to interrupt you. That's been pointed out to me. And I apologize for that. I'm working on that. So just so you know, call that out for me, because I really do want to try to listen. So whatever it is that's been off in the past, show up with it, name it.
I also love you would talk about how not using the word why, but using the word how is such a game changer. Can you elaborate more about that? I think that's really helpful to people to whether you're sitting around. We do it. I mean, we do it every day. She and I together on this podcast. I'm the one answering the Facebook and the YouTube and all the things. And even me, with all the tools I have to take a deep breath and, okay, how come that, and I think about what you say about the why versus the how. So I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we tend to want to ask, why do you believe what you believe? Why do you think that? It's the first question that pops into our minds. It's It's raw and it's obvious. Switching it to how takes the focus off of reasons and puts the focus on people and their stories. Why is this important? Because there's so much suspicion and mistrust and misperception across our divides that when you ask people why, they're going to feel suddenly kind of called up, called out. They're going to want to be guarded. And when they think of finding reasons to answer, they're going to be tempted to reach for reasons that others have used, that others have taken shelter under. When they heard on the newscast, what they saw on TikTok, they're going to reach for those reasons and they're going to give them to you. And then you're going to look at those reasons and say, well, those don't make any sense. Here's my reasons. They're better. And the other person's not going to budge and you're not going to budge. And so you're going to repeat your reasons, but louder, trying to find different angles. Yes. Maybe you didn't hear me the first time. Exactly. Let me yell it now. And meanwhile, you're not budging.
Right.
And you're not learning, but the truth is you're not really actually necessarily answering genuinely as yourself. You are looking for reasons in a divided, mistrustful, and scary time when we see in the research people are afraid sometimes to say what they really think about things. They're cautious, they're guarded all the time. So the thing is to remove us from those contexts where we are so likely to be guarded and therefore a little unoriginal, a little dishonest, inauthentic, not because we mean to be, but because we're trying to survive the interaction.
Right.
So if you go, how did you come to believe that? What you're asking for is a story. You're asking someone to give you a tour and walk you down the path they took to some conclusion instead of putting them on trial, which is how that's going to feel a lot of the times. So this is not a script. You don't actually have to say the words, how did you come to believe? It's more about, oh, did that ever happen to you? Or do you remember when you started, sensing that that's where you came down on this? Anything that gets people to talk about their own internal story, because when you talk about your story, there's nothing to contest about it. It's like fake news. Like, no, there's no fake news. I know where I was 5 years ago. Like, you get to step away from that level of scrutiny and just connect as humans, and then empathy gets built.
Well, and also, when you were talking about just connecting as humans, that's where the misconceptions come in. When you tell your own story, those misconceptions start to go away. And that we all do this all day long, every day. And now we're in these hyper, as from your book, the siloed, we're in our own silos, and the media is feeding us what we want to hear, right? I looked at your Colby, and there was a really smart student. It was about misconceptions, and it was about, you know what I'm talking about political violence. And it was, I think it was right after Charlie Kirk had been assassinated when you went to Colby. Maybe. I think that timing was about that. And how far off the misconceptions? Can you talk about that question? And
yeah. Honestly, I think this is the bit of trivia that I wish everybody fully understood is how wrong we get each other when we're asked to estimate other people's perspectives on things if they are on the other side of us politically. We are all terrible. A lot of folks just kind of assume like, well, my side, like we get it. It's them that hate us. They don't understand us. Like, no, look in the mirror, dude. We're all doing that. And in this instance, it was a survey, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was a survey that showed that both sides thought the other side supported political violence degrees more.
I felt like it was like 42%, and in reality it was like 1% and 2%.
Yeah, it's nuts. There's so many ways to do those surveys, and some of those surveys I think are just less robust than others. You can find probably a survey that a social scientist will tell you is not very well done, that might show some large numbers, right? But you have to parse it out. So the folks who are being very careful about this see very low levels of support of political violence, but very high levels of projections of support for political violence on the other side. So if you think the other side would go that far, well, gee, you better go that far just to protect yourself. Or if they're doing it, we can do it too. And this is a cycle of projections about hate are the same, there's all these studies that show, I mean, an early one that I put in my book was both sides believe the other side despises them twice as much as they actually do. So yeah, it's misperceptions.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was also, I'm like full of studies today, but there was a giant sort of study of studies out of Stanford and
studies.
Rob Willer. Yeah, they exist. But this guy named Rob Willer, who's a master at this stuff. And they were looking for interventions. They actually tested real world interventions and their impact on reducing support for political violence. And the number one intervention in terms of impact was correcting misperceptions. That's it. If we just get each other right, we'll have taken a giant leap forward. And that is so hard because so much of the media and the signals are exaggerations, not always intending to be so misleading, but they are. And they leave us with horrible impressions of each other. Meanwhile, we are too afraid of each other to do what you two are doing.
So how do we do that?
Talk.
I mean, how do we, if we're being fed from each side, our media and our social media and all that, how do we get through those misconceptions?
I really think it's that foundation I talked about earlier. You have to talk to somebody, a flesh and blood walking human creature, not a bot, not an AI.
Yeah.
An actual messy human whom you can't predict and whom you might have to be a little vulnerable around, and might be a little vulnerable with you, and check it out. As a journalist, I mean, I came up in journalism, and there's this joke rule about how important it is to check your facts, right? If your mother says she loves you, check it out. I love that. I've always loved it. But yeah, if the world is telling you, you're conservative, that liberals are elitist, condescending, hateful snobs that hate America, check it out. If the world is telling you that conservatives are, I don't know, like all the ists that you can imagine putting at the end of words and just want people to lose their freedoms, check it out. Is that really true? I don't know how you check it out without at least checking some primary sources. That's another lesson I got in journalism. And by the way, in school, I was taught not to trust the secondary, tertiary quartile sources. At least my teacher would not give me a good grade on my reports, right? So if that's what we all learn, why don't we recognize that people are the primary source?
Okay, so that I think this is a great segue into your Sherman, Oregon project and that whole, you actually went in and did a project that absolutely exemplifies what you're talking about. So tell us a little bit about that and how that all turned out.
Yeah. So this was way back in the yesteryear of right after the 2016 election. I had started a publication here in true blue Democratic Seattle. And the day after that election was shocking in many Democratic areas, for sure, across the country, including here. It felt dead. And after that, because some of the values we held as an organization, we were trying to be closer to people than most other local news. And so we also held as a strong value curiosity. And so we asked people, what do you think will be important now? And we heard back, I just don't know any Republicans and conservatives. Maybe I do, but I'm hearing in the news about folks who live very different lives than I do. So, long story short, we ended up finding out that Sherman County, Oregon, is the nearest county geographically to King County, Washington, where Seattle is, that voted exactly opposite us in that year's presidential election. So it was completely flipped and more for Trump. So we said, okay, could we find someone there who might help us bring these worlds together? And it is a county of some 2,000 people. It's small. It borders the Washington-Oregon border. It's all agriculture. It's all a sea of beautiful wheat fields. I didn't know any of this at the time. I was just Googling. We ended up connecting with someone who would become a dear friend, Sandy McNabb. He passed away earlier this year. I was at his funeral.
Sorry.
Got to meet his family. Incredible, incredible person. Just a legendary agricultural agent for the county. And boy, he taught me a lot. We got on the phone with him over and over and planned this experience. and ended up taking a busload of liberal Seattleites who were ready for what this was and for what this was not. We were very careful to say, if you're getting on a bus to go educate people, you don't belong on this trip. This is not what we're doing. This is understanding and curiosity. We don't want to hear any of that kind of thing. And we got wonderful people on that bus. And we met wonderful people in Morrow, a very, very, very small town, like hundreds of people. And we had 16 show up. So it was a high penetration.
The impetus behind this then was curiosity. And it was the folks in Seattle couldn't understand for the life of them why somebody would vote for Trump. And I think this goes back to why Nicole and I started this podcast. It was the day after the 2024 election and said the same thing. All of her liberal friends were calling her because they knew that she had a conservative friend, and they were saying, could you get some answers for us? Because we don't know what the hell just happened. And it was funny because Nicole was like, okay, I got to understand this. And so I feel like it's the same thing that happened, in Sherman County, that then you take these people and you got to learn that the agriculture community, the farmers, had a completely different agenda. Their priorities were completely different.
Yeah, exactly. And the assumptions that urban Seattleites brought were missing so many variables because they were mostly focused on their own filters and their own experiences. And this is what we lose when we don't ask other people how, when we don't hear other people's stories. We lose the fact that different paths walked through life in this country will show you different concerns, will lead you to put a different priority on problems and how to solve them. And that's exactly what we found in Sherman County. And on the bus ride back, you couldn't even hear yourself think. People were just abuzz on some of the things we learned. It was really cool and really inspiring. And I'm still in touch with, everyone who was on that trip. And some of the folks ended up being quite lit by that, and carried it. Same with the folks who showed up from Sherman County. I've been in touch with them too.
When you guys got in the rooms, what did that look like? Were you doing exercises? Were you how did it work?
Yeah, it was really important to not go straight into some kind of exercise. Yeah. Part of the skill of all of this, talking across differences, is to understand that the people have to come before the content. You have to see each other as humans. So the very first thing we did was we showed up with a housewarming gift, and a card and a plant. They were hosting us. They had a meal that had been donated, just lovely sandwiches, and we shared a meal without any agenda. Before that, we hopped on a bus, and Sandy and some friends gave us a tour of the wheat fields. And we just saw the rolling hills, and we understood different parts of the seasons and what kinds of wheat it was and all of this. And that was so important. That was maybe the most important part of the whole experience. It's critical that people feel seen before you just start fighting. You have to just know, who are you? And here's who I am, and give yourself the opportunity to demonstrate that I care about you, that there's some level of I'm here and I accept you, and I feel welcome by you, and I'm trying to welcome you back. That's extremely hard when there's so many differences. And there was nervousness. I could tell there was a tension in the air, And then by the time lunch was over and we started, my heart was pounding just out of my chest. And the first question we asked everybody was, what do you hope to take away from this experience that's going to make you feel like it was worth it? For the folks in Seattle, they drove 5 hours.
Yeah.
This was not a little trip. So, and it was then that I started to breathe easy, because one after another, you couldn't even tell which person was from Sherman County, which person was from King County. They were all saying the same things. We're so divided. I just want to understand. I'm just tired of the yelling. I don't understand why our politicians have to behave the way they do. I like to think that I'm a curious and open-minded person, but I don't get to practice that. One after the other, older farmers, younger Seattleites, whoever. Once we went around and everybody kind of gave that message, I was like, we're going to be good. And I had like a crisis response. Me and my co-founder, Annika, we had planned scenarios. Like, what if somebody yells and like flings a pen at someone. I don't know. What if someone storms out of the room? Not even close. Honestly, one of the biggest lessons I learned was, why was I so afraid? What was I so afraid of? Putting people in a room together. When did I lose this much trust?
I think that when people get in the rooms with each other, they don't, like, we've created this society with social media and everything that people feel emboldened to behave badly. And that when you are in person, it's like, are you really going to scream at that person? I don't think you are. I mean, even that, there was that YouTube show that put one conservative with 1,000 liberals, or one liberal with 1,000 conservative, and they just scream at each other. I'm like, this isn't real. This is performative. And when you really like get in the rooms with people, everyone wants to be seen and heard and loved, and they're scared, and they don't want to sound stupid, and they want to feel accepted. And there was one thing that I remember as you were talking about, you had an example in your book about, and I'm going to get this wrong, but it was like a water law or something about water ownership. Yeah. That the Seattleites and New York City girl, I was like, what? What's that?
Yeah, isn't it crazy? Yeah. We were all like, what are they talking about?
Like, is this because that was a big aha.
Huge. It's called the Waters of the United States Rule, and it's like, several paragraphs in federal regulations about land, which for people in the cities, I don't care. I got my apartment. I don't care. For people who own acres and acres of farms or work on those acres and acres of farms, it's a completely different story. And the Waters of the United States Rule, the fear was that it could be read and interpreted to mean that if there's a big rainstorm between hills and there's a valley on your farm, and suddenly the next morning there's a pond there, that the government can come and say, oh, that's a body of water, that's our land now, bye-bye. Which sounds crazy, but I looked into it. It's not crazy. There's been a bunch of close calls.
Really?
The government and control of land and farmers. I mean, farming was one of the first industries, family-owned farms. They're still around, and the people in the cities just have no connection to them anymore. But for these farmers, many of them, like, there was a 4th generation farmer there. They've read this rule back and front, and they do not trust Democrats to know the first thing about how to safeguard their interests in something like this. But they trust Republicans, and they trust the businessman who just became president. Hey, he understands something about this. And that was a big motivator to the farmers in Sherman County. And it seemed to be a heck of a lot stronger than a lot of the social issues that some of the liberals assumed the conservatives in Sherman County actually malevolently put first. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, for malevolent reasons and all this. It was just not quite that at all.
Well, okay, so what was it then that the conservatives learned about the liberals in Seattle?
I remember talking with one of the folks who had been there 4 years later. I went down in 2020 again just to visit everybody. And he was telling me that he was readying himself for a bunch of people with piercings and tattoos just everywhere. And people who, he was seeing on TV tearing up the world in summer of 2020. People who would destroy their own downtown, which for him was just so evil. Here's these small businesses or businesses of any kind, like people trying to make a living, and you're just destroying things. Like, what is this, right? So what he saw in those liberals in his mind was a lot of hate, and he was wondering back then, like, like he had an image of that. Obviously, not like the 2020, but there were already like this idea of the protesting anarchist kind of who would just tear it all down. That was the image he had. Yeah, and he was delighted to see totally normal people who could have just boring in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, we're not trying to tear up anything was kind of what the liberals probably showed, is like we're trying to build things too. We just have the wrong ideas about each other.
I watched your TED Talk, and you talked about this idea of maybe we just need to divorce, maybe we just need to have this, it's not the United States of America, it's a divided states of America. What about that idea I mean, maybe we do. Maybe we just need to say, nope, you know what? We're better off just dividing. Yep.
I've heard people argue for that in surprisingly almost like peaceful ways. This is the way. This is the way. We just give in and we create separate societies. And I'd be lying if I said like there isn't like a tempting undercurrent to that. It's like, well, let's just draw the circles where they seem to be already. I see many problems with that. One of them being that scenario is based on a lie. That scenario is based on the idea that we are grossly divided. The research shows that we are not. We are not that grossly divided. The folks at the extremes tend to be the ones who most believe that and most push that narrative because it tends to further political ends, right? Fear and rage mobilize people to the polls, and those extreme voices are good at that. And so the parties go, yeah, extremes, sure, come on in. Let's use your rhetoric. Let's all work together to freak people out and convince them that the other side is not just like disagreeing with them on a few things about this issue, but would destroy the very values that they treasure around this issue. It's complete BS. So that's one thing, is I think that would be a harsh and rash action because it's based mostly on kind of the media and projection and narrative layer that is making everything a funhouse mirror right now and making it hard to tell what's real and what's not. If it were based on reality, then okay, maybe that's a conversation. Even then, I see a lot of problems with it, including I can already tell that each side is getting dumber.
Did you say dumber or dimmer?
Dumber.
Okay.
Dumber.
She said
you could
dumb.
say dimmer too. Dumber. I think each side is getting dumber, and the research shows us why. When we're surrounded by people who share our instincts, we also share our blind spots. So each side is getting a narrower worldview the more time it spends with only itself, while also believing that it's seeing enough of the world to make judicious decisions for a thriving and healthy society. We need each other. The logo of my podcast is a beating human heart. And what I love about it, many things, but one of them is that the blood in there is, red and blue. We've got the veins and we got the arteries, and you can't have one without the other. It's we're part of that same beating heart. We need each other to beat. That's what I believe. I think once the United States of America starts carving itself up because of ideological differences, something extremely primitively crucial will die. I don't know. Maybe I'm putting way too much on that, but I'm really proud of us. I'm proud of the way that we have fought each other in order to become stronger and gotten better at fighting each other right as we've gone. There's been a lot of wounds and a lot of scars, boy, and a lot of pain and a lot of hate and all these things, but we keep emerging stronger and stronger. So if we choose this to be the moment where
that we throw
we've had enough of the insults, forget it.
Yeah.
Come on, and I don't think anyone's going to end up better off in that scenario. I just don't.
Monica, do you see any hope?
Oh, yeah. Everywhere.
Tell us.
I mean, in you two, right now I'm just like awash in the hope that you two represent. Podcasts like this were even more rare,
Yeah.
Back when we did the Sherman County trip, it just would have been unheard of. Now there is a universal, I think, consensus, honestly, around how necessary this is, what you two are doing. Now what I'm hearing is people acknowledging that it's necessary, but then telling me why they can't do it.
Exactly. We hear that a lot.
But I'm not hearing a lot of people saying it's not necessary or it's not important. They're carving out the reasons or the corners where they can't do it, or where they think another deeper, more deeply held value. Usually I got to fight for this one thing, and in order to do that, I can't be talking to the other side, which I don't think is correct. But a lot of people have walked different paths, and they believe it's correct for them in that moment. I'm not going to begrudge them that. It's tipping. It just doesn't feel like it's tipping because it's happening at the same time as we're seeing the consequences of such reactionary, vicious political comportment play out on the national stage from both parties. And, you know, people will hear that and say, both parties, like only one party is in power and look what they're doing. And if you're on the left and you're saying that, I get you. But look, this is how escalation works. You know, usually the next party is going to take something to an egregious extreme even more. And I'm not trying to make an equivalence. I think that the left and the right can do awful things in their own very unique ways. And we should always be very vigilant and aware of the damage happening to the entire system based on whatever's happening right now. And you were talking about the shutdown. I got to tell you, the image from this shutdown that just aggravated the heck out of me was just the image of, you know, the Republican leader speaking at a podium, and the sign at the podium says, "The Democrats shut down." And then the Democrat leader speaking at the podium, and the sign on the podium says, "The GOP shut down." And I'm like, you two are like my kids.
We have said that.
I'm paying you?
We talked about that. We did a government shutdown episode, and we're like, are they free?
What?
Like, what's happening?
Yeah. This is ridiculous.
Like, we voted for you, and you guys need to all go away. We
get the job done. You know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing freaking tantrums.
That's right.
Well, if the Republicans, if the Democrats, is blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, shared purpose, people. Yeah. You're there with a shared purpose. Part of what's going on now is that for the Republican Party, their purpose has gotten bigger than the shared purpose. And for the Democrat Party, same. And when you start playing those games, where the heck is the shared purpose? We start to lose our nation altogether. Mm-hmm. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. They get paid a lot of money and get a lot of prestige to be like, we can't do it because you're just being mean. And I know I don't mean to demean. I am being a little crass, but
we feel the same way. Yeah. It's absolutely true. Yeah. It's absolutely true.
Just, that's not an excuse. The only reason we accept that as an excuse is because we are already so poisoned to look at the other side as being just that evil. That's why we believe it.
Right.
Yeah, they are bullies. They are really stupid. You're right. They're foolish. They're terrible. We already blame the people in our lives we know on the other side for everything.
Right.
If we didn't do that, if we had more resilience, we would laugh at this.
Right.
We don't have the capability to laugh. Too many of us are believing it.
Now, I think there is a small coalition from both sides, and I've seen interviews with, it's like a New York congressman who is a Republican with a Democrat from Nevada. I don't know. I think it's a small faction that is not probably getting paid a lot of money and, who aren't the senators that have been in there for 40 years. They're the, relatively new that are trying to work together. And I think that's where our hope lies is with, the ones that are finally going to say, come on. Enough.
Yeah. I know. And the truth is, they've always been there. The really good politicians, there are way more of them than not. It's just, again, the media, the amplification machines, they don't get a word in edgewise.
Right.
I've known so many really incredibly hardworking politicians that struggle to get on any of the news channels to talk about what they're working on because conflict is what sells.
Right.
And so it's just the whole information system is toxic in that way. But things are happening because of the level of exhaustion people are hitting, the level of intolerance for the kind of rupture that is happening to families and communities everywhere, not to mention the dysfunction. I mean, it's beneath us to become children.
Yes.
Fighting over blaming and whatever. We have a job to do, and we are a lot better and smarter than this. Mm-hmm. So I think the tolerance is just kind of hit the floor, and change happens from there. So I'm working on the revolution.
Good,
folks.
I like it.
That's awesome. And so are you.
Yes, we are. So. Yes, we are. Oh my gosh, Monica, this has been amazing.
Absolutely.
I think it might be time for a good for the soul. Do you have one for us?
Valerie Kaur wrote a book called See No Stranger, and she talks about looking at every human being as a potential friend that you don't know yet. You are a sister I do not yet know. You are a brother I do not yet know. I find that really inspiring, and when I catch myself looking at people through the lens of my emotions for that moment. I'm tired, so everybody's uninteresting. I'm irritated, so everyone's in my way. I have to take that veil off by remembering that each person I'm with has their own extremely complex, vivid life. They had their own irritations and annoyances today. I don't know what they went through. I don't know who they've been talking to. I'm an extra in their story. In fact, that's probably the good for the soul I want to leave you with. You are the center of your story, but you're also an extra in other people's stories.
Oh, that is so good.
And right, like, there's a word that was added to the dictionary a few years ago. It's called Sonder.
Yes.
Sonder is the realization that other human beings have lives as vivid and complex as yours. And to me, it's a physical sensation, the awareness of that. I get filled with this warmth. What do I have to fear? And I recognize that sometimes we do have to fear each other. But I like injecting myself with that. And it makes interactions with other people so much more possible and mysterious, which just opens me up.
Absolutely. That is so great.
That's great.
Okay, so now we're going to play a little game
All right.
of Would You Rather?
Okay.
Would you rather be a guest speaker in front of a group of people that purely align with your train of thought, don't align at all with your line of thinking, or 50-50?
50-50 because, okay, I wouldn't say just me versus an entire crowd that's disagreeing, because if I'm on stage speaking and they're not, that's not enough parity, Parity, for me to learn from them as much as they're learning from me. If it's a 50-50 group, then I can model. What I speak about is how to interact across difference. So I can model something that I could have them exercise right then and there in that same room. You know how rare 50-50 rooms are?
Yes.
I would much rather be in a 50-50 room.
That is awesome.
Love it. I love it.
Nicole, what would your be?
Oh, 50-50. 50-50. Absolutely. Because you have an opportunity to learn from the people that don't align with you. I think we've gone to this point, like, it's so boring. Have we not acknowledged how boring this is? That we all like think alike and talk alike and see all the same shit. Like, I like learning from other people. Like, everyone has different experiences, and we've talked about this a lot, Monica, where even the words liberal and conservative, it's gotten to the point where if you're a liberal, you must believe all of these things. Or if you're a conservative, you must believe all of these things. And if you dare say something different, you're out of that tribe too. Like, and then, exactly. So, and it's like, wait a minute, I am me with all of my stories and all of my feelings that has made me this complex human, just like everyone else. Everyone else. And how cool is it when you actually take the time to learn from each other? Right?
Oh, it's huge.
It's huge.
It's everything. It's
huge.
the spice of life.
It's huge.
Yeah. I don't want it any other way.
Right.
That's good.
Do you have a would you rather, Monica?
Would you rather zip into the future and give advice to your 80-year-old self, or zip into the past and give advice to your 16-year-old self?
I want to go to the past, because I feel like I'm getting so much more wise the older I get. And if I could just tell that 16-year-old, it's going to be okay.
I think I'd go the other way, because I think everything the stupid things that I did in the past made me who I am today. I need to let my 80-year-old self know that it's going to be okay. I have so much more anxiety now than I ever have in my life. And whether that's because I'm menopause or just because of the world that we live in, I think I need to go talk to my 80-year-old self and go, okay, we're gonna survive this.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I love that.
Monica,
Awesome.
Thank you so much. This has truly been an honor to have you. You are brilliant and beautiful, and you have so much experience and so much to knowledge, I think, that our listener needs to hear. I mean, we can just say things all day, but you're the expert here, and you've got just the work that you've done on this topic is fantastic and gives us hope for sure.
Yes, yeah, well, thank you. And I want to emphasize, though, that this goes the other way. And I tell this to Braver Angels volunteers. I tell this to folks who are innovating in their own communities. The people who are routinely going across the divide are the revolution. Like, you two are the revolution. You two are the resistance. You, the one that I care about. You two are the counterculture, right? In a society where division and at least verbal violence is the norm, conversation is counterculture, as my friend Manu Meal likes to say. Like, so pat yourselves on the back. Tell your kids that you two are the counterculture. See what they say.
Thank you.
But you are. So you are doing the work that matters most. I'm just trying to get more people to dare to be like you.
That is awesome.
That's all.
Wow.
So cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've Got to Talk is produced across the world by the wildly talented, creative, and hilarious team at Bambi Media. Our theme song is Jump Jive Swing by Space Train Unlimited. Thank you so much for listening, and join us every week for another episode of We've Got to Talk.